talking about pop filters. Talk about pop filters. Oh, are we on? Are we recording?
We are recording.
Oh, okay. All right. Hey, welcome back
Surprise.
welcome back to Student of the Gun Radio. And I am your host, Professor Paul Markle. Thanks for joining us for part 2 of this week's episode. And thanks to Jared for joining me in the studio and being over there on the other side, queuing up all the cool music and the themes. We've got a theme coming up for you that we haven't played for a couple of weeks, but we were kind of excited to find this upcoming story because that gave us the opportunity to do a vagination report. And I know you guys out there, for the last couple of weeks, you're like, oh man, there's been no vagination report. I don't know what to do with myself. Be patient. We've got one for you. Now, speaking of fun, new, cool things to do, a couple of weeks ago, we introduced you to the official Student of the Gun, Name That Tune, where we worked the actions of various firearms and had you guys write in and send us your guesses. And the first week, everybody got all 4. Well, not everybody, but most people got the first 4, but they didn't get the last one. And so we redid it last week. And we want to say congratulations to who, Jared? Who are we congratulating?
We are congratulating Jeremy, who got number 5 right, as well as the first 4.
Yeah, he got the first 4 and number 5. And what was number 5, Jared?
Number 5 was the SIG P226.
That's right. And I thought that I deliberately did that one because the decocker on a SIG P226 has a very unique sound. Any of you guys who are dedicated students of the gun know that distinctive SIG decocker sound. So congratulations to Jeremy. He is now the proud owner of an extra large official Student of the Gun t-shirt. That's right. He can wear it with pride. And when people say, hey man, where'd you get that t-shirt? What's he going to be able to say, Jared?
From studentofthegun.com.
Yeah, but no.
I mean, Student of the Gun.
But where did he get it? It's a major award. He won it. What he'll be able to say is, I won this. And let's face it, people ask you, hey, where'd you get that? And if you won it, it's even better, right? And you can say, it's a major award. I have brain power. Mind power. That's how I got it there. Mind power.
Is it mind-boggling?
It's mind-boggling. All right. Well, before we start bottling minds, let's thank our buddies at Kel-Tec. Easy for me to say as I clear my throat. Kel-Tec Weapons of Cocoa, Florida. Crossbreed Holsters of Republic, Missouri. Colt, the makers of the LE901 rifle. And, of course, XS Sight Systems, who bring us our good guy of the week every single week. Now, this one, I was teasing you with it at the very beginning, and Jared's going to go ahead and cue up our vagination report music right now, and then we'll get into it.
Tiptoe through the window, by the window, that is where I'll be. Come tiptoe through the tulips with me.
Well, okay, just in case you needed more evidence that this world has gone insane, we've got it for you right here. And special thanks to Tiny Tim for giving us that vagination report music. Now, this comes to us from the BBC.com, www.bbc.com. And the title of the story is Canada, Schools Axe, that's A-X-E, okay, like when you cut something that's not... it's not ghetto slang for the word ask. So schools axe he and she in favor of Z, and that's spelled X-E. And you're like, what? Oh, and top story, or top, some schools in Vancouver are reported to be doing away with the old-fashioned pronouns he and she for their transgender pupils in favor of the new gender-neutral word, X-E, pronounced Z. Now, Jared, you're a smart kid, even though you did go to public school. What does gender refer to?
Gender refers to the masculinity or femininity of something.
Or there's a third one, or masculine, feminine, or
Neutral.
And that's in the written and spoken language. So he, she, or what's the third word? If it's not a he or a she, it is a what?
A Z.
No. he, a she, or
It.
an it. That's right, because it is gender neutral. So apparently, well, is Vancouver? Let me see. Vancouver's over on the left coast of Canada. I think if you're in California and you go up, is that correct? Am I getting my Canadian geography right, Jared? It's on the left coast. I'm pretty sure that's on the left coast. And I think I was actually talking to a friend of mine here recently. Well, maybe it wasn't recently. I don't know. But we were talking about Canada and their gun control laws and the socialism in Canada and so forth. And he said, although Canada is obviously different and has its own unique characteristics, he said largely what you've got in Canada is, he said, you have a similar situation to that in the United States. On the far left coast and the far right coast in Canada, you have liberal lunacy. And then in the middle, it's kind of just like, conservative and normal, and people aren't insane. Because apparently the insane people that run the schools up there in Vancouver have never heard of the use of, where I really learned it was driven home to me about gender in written and spoken speech, Jared?
Where
when I took German in high school. I took in my freshman year in high school. I took German, and what do they teach you? There's not just there's three words, right, Jared? What are they? You remember your high school German?
There's
der, and
D,
das.
Der, and das, yes,
right.
For male.
And D is feminine, der is masculine, and das is neutral. Right. And that was, explained to us when you take a foreign language. Same if you take Spanish or you take French or you take German or you take whatever, you realize to use, because if you go to a foreign language or a foreign country and you mix up, you go to speak German and you mix up the term die and der and das, you sound like a dummy. You sound like a dumb foreigner that doesn't know how to speak the language correctly. Well, here we have people in Canada who've decided that apparently they forgot the word IT for neutrality. I think that if somebody doesn't know what they are, they can't pull their pants down and look between their legs and figure out whether they're a male or a female, then you just refer to them as an it, right, Jared? Doesn't that make sense to you? Well, apparently the parents in this school district, you say, well, it's Canada, but it seems so similar to the United States of America. What we have is a school board here that said that they did a debate and a vote and so forth, and it says opponents of this new policy shouted dictator and liar at school trustees when it was passed after only a brief debate at a rowdy public meeting that was guarded by who?
The state
police. Where have we seen that before, Jared? Where now we feel the need, these elitist bureaucrats feel the need to flank themselves with police officers when they shove these bullcrap decisions down you parents' throats. What do we just have? We had a guy who spoke out against the school board and was arrested by the state. Had a member of the state arrest him for trespassing and disorderly conduct because he dared to speak out of turn. So here in Canada, they're pulling the U.S. model where you have a bunch of school trustees who've decided that. And here's the deal: it says parents who question the changes argue that their 6-year-olds are not qualified to understand identity issues. I'm going to get you the quote from the superintendent here, and it says. It says, we are standing up for kids and making our schools safer and more inclusive, said board member Mike Lombardi.
How does that, first of all, that last name he does not deserve that, but
no kidding, we're going to strip him of that last name.
How does that make the school safer? Are they having problems with
apparently, if you can't use the right gender-based pronoun, that it makes you an unsafe person.
So farther down in the story, it says parents who question the changes argue that 6-year-olds aren't qualified to understand identity issues, which I agree with, and that some of them can't even use the toilet yet. Do you know any 6-year-olds that can't use the toilet?
Yeah, that's kind of a bizarre statement. It says some of them can't even use the toilet yet, much less decide which washroom to do it in. Oh, yeah. In addition to totally confusing these little young skulls full of mush by telling them that they get to choose their gender identity, they've decided they've changed the toilet policies, and now children are allowed to use whichever facility they prefer, including a mandatory unisex option. Folks, how are we going to survive as a human race? We can't if we can't even like agree upon thousands of year old language. We can't even agree upon the use of the terms he and she. And you say, Paul, what does this have to do with Student of the Gun, and what does it have to do with that? Well, Student of the Gun is not just about guns. It's not just about things that go bang, bang. It's about the mentality. It's about thinking. It's about engaging your brain. If you want to be a student of the gun, you need to be able to engage your brain. And now, what have we told you previously? We've told you previously that there are 3 ways to enslave a free man without firing a shot. And what are those ways? Well, you keep them ignorant, you keep them distracted, and then if you can't keep them ignorant, you can't keep them distracted, then you foist a bunch of manufactured guilt upon them, or you shame them into shutting their mouths. And what this right here is it's twofold. You have ignorance. Kids won't even know how to speak the language. How can they argue with you if you can't even speak the language? And you also keep the parents distracted with this kind of vapid garbage. So while you're raising their taxes and while you're taking over more and more control over their lives through, bureaucracies and memorandums and new legislation and not even legislation, because legislation has to be voted on. What you have bureaucracies that just decide. Well, we got together in our room and we decided that you're not allowed to own that anymore. You can't have that anymore. You can't listen to that anymore. And we thought you guys would get a kick out of that. So, it's not just America where people have lost their ever-loving minds. It's in Canada, too. So, hey there, all of you up in the Great White North. Congratulations. All right, it's time to get into the meat of the story. Now, ladies and gentlemen, you know that people say, well, are you pro-Second Amendment? And what we like to say is, well, we're pro that whole United States Constitution thing. We're pro the Bill of Rights, and we believe in the founding of this nation, that this nation is not perfect, but it is one of the best founded nations in the history of mankind, and that our problem is not the laws that we started with, it's where we're at. It's the fact that we've left them behind, that we've left behind the principles of our founding fathers. So we support the Second Amendment, but we also support the First and Second, Third, and Fourth, and all that good jazz. And we also know that this is something that's troubled me for quite a while, that gun owners, we like to talk about the Second Amendment and how the Second Amendment guarantees our rights to have firearms. And, I've got that, and we appreciate that. But we also need to consider the fact that firearms are property, or are they? Now, if you look throughout the founding documents, the original arguments for the United States Constitution, the original arguments that were put forth by our founding fathers to come together instead of being 13 separate colonies, to come together as 13 unified states, as United States. One of the words that was used frequently throughout the founding documents, and it was deliberately put into the Bill of Rights, was the term property. And if you go back in history, you'll notice, or you'll research that one of the main complaints was that people could be deprived of their property without due course of law. And that's gone out for not just in the United States of America, not just in the colonies. If you are a student of history, you'll know that that's one of the big complaints of the masses, or it has been a big complaint of the masses since the dawn of time, would be the government, whoever is in the ruling class, depriving the citizens or the peasantry of their property without any cause or justification. Just, well, we're the government and we said that you can't have that, so we're going to take it. So too bad. Well, our founding fathers were very much aware of that fact. And so, you go into the Fourth Amendment, and it says to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures and so forth, and that, these things cannot be seized without oath or affirmation. Then you go down into the Fifth Amendment, and what does it say? It says, not deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. So you can't just arbitrarily tell people they're not allowed to have that property. You can't just arbitrarily take it from them. Now, what a lot of you guys may not remember, you guys in the audience, a lot of you are fond of the Bill of Rights, and you've read the Bill of Rights. Do you guys know about the 14th Amendment? Now, in the 14th Amendment, this was actually ratified after the War of Northern Aggression, the war between the states. And in Section 1, it says, nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor deny any person within its jurisdiction equal protection under the law. So as you guys can see, that our founding documents are laced throughout with protections of private property. And you say, well, good. Now, what is private property? What is property? Is it grass? Is it land? Is it something you build a house on when you say, well, that's property? Well, throughout the history of our nation, there have been many judicial decisions, court decisions, that have said that no, property is not just land. Property is anything you can lawfully own. Your money is your property. You're supposed to, based on the founding intent, do with that what you will. I mean, as long as it is not illegal for you to possess that, as long as it's not contraband, something like, you can't say, well, this heroin is my property, so I'm going to sell it and distribute it as I see fit. Well, you can't do that because right now in the United States of America, it is illegal to possess heroin. But what about firearms? Is it legal for you to possess a firearm? And you say, well, yes, I live in free America. I can lawfully own a firearm. And there's no prohibition against the firearm that I want to own. Well, we started losing that, and I think you guys realize it, as a whole in the nation in 1934 with the National Firearms Act. And then we lost even more in 1968 when we allowed the government to dictate to us again what kind of guns we were allowed to have and not have. And then again in 1986. And then they did it to us again in 1994. But fortunately, a few senators were smart enough, or congressmen, to put in a sunset clause into the crime bill so that it wasn't permanent. Well, what I'm getting to is this. When it comes to firearms, what you need to ask yourself is, do you believe that under law that your firearms are your lawfully owned property, and then you cannot be deprived of those without due course of law? Okay, you say yes. Well, recently we had, just this last week, a Supreme Court decision that undermines that yet again. And this came out of this was actually an appellate case, and it comes down to the straw purchase boogeyman, because apparently in the United States of America, all these bad people and evil people and gang members and so forth, what they're doing is they're convincing someone else to go into the gun shop and buy the guns for them. And the appellant in this case was Bruce Abramsky. And Bruce was a former police officer who bought a gun for his uncle, assuming that by showing his police ID, he could get a discount. He's trying to save himself some money, right? Even though his uncle could have lawfully purchased the gun. All right. So it's kind of hinky, but did he break a law? Well, Abramsky was charged with violating a law because he falsely checked yes on the box that said he was the actual buyer. So, and as you dig into it, they didn't actually bust him initially. They busted him when he transferred the gun to his uncle. And if you go down to the story, you see that how did he do that? He walked out of the store and he handed the gun to his uncle and he said, "Here you go, buddy. Happy birthday or have a good day," or whatever. No, actually, they went through the same process again, that same Form 4473 process where he transferred it to the uncle. And, well, he was arrested and charged with violating the law of making a straw purchase. And it got all the way up to the Supreme Court. And I think if you're hip, if you know what's going on in America today, you know that the Supreme Court has abandoned us. The Supreme Court has abandoned the people of the United States in favor of the government of the United States. And if you don't believe me, just look at some of the decisions that have been coming out of there lately. And it says, writing for the court, 5-4 majority opinion, Justice Elena Kagan, who was appointed by whom? Who appointed Elena Kagan, Jared? The artist formerly known as Barry Soetoro? He's over there zoning again. Are you working? Are you working?
Yeah, I'm over here working.
You're right. So it says, she said that the law helps keep guns out of the hands of those not legally able to buy them, including those with mental illnesses or previous felony convictions. And Justice Roberts, Scalia, Thomas, and Alito dissented. So you see this, they're basing their opinion on, well, this makes sure that only the right people can get guns. Well, what have we seen from recently about the current gun control laws in America? Do they work? Do the current set of gun control laws, do they keep guns out of the hands of bad people? Well, they don't. They certainly don't in Chicago, and they don't in New York. They didn't in California and Santa Barbara. They didn't in Florida. They didn't in. You want me to go on? Ad nauseum. The laws don't work. Laws are not there to prevent behavior from occurring. Laws are there to punish, to establish a statute, and to punish those who break them. I know you're like, what? You mean they can't just pass a law and make things stop happening? They passed a law against murder 2,000 years ago, and there are still murders. What? But I thought there was a law against murder. I thought there was a law against rape, against theft. What? There are laws against all those things, and they still happen? So you mean it's up to humans to curtail their behavior? Oh, this is crazy talk. So, but my question to you would be this. Right now in the United States, there's a big push for universal background checks, and it sounds reasonable. And everybody says, well, how can you be against that? And that's how the other side gets you, is they put forth an argument that if you go against it, it makes you sound unreasonable. You're a crazy person. You just want crazy people and criminals and felons to have guns. Hey, let me wake you up to modern day America. Felons already have guns. Felons can get guns. It doesn't stop. The current laws don't stop felons from getting guns. What? You mean the current laws only stop the law abiding? That's crazy talk, Paul. But ask yourself this. If they pass a universal background check, like everyone says is reasonable, what that would essentially mean is that it would be unlawful for you to transfer your legally owned property, then that's what guns are, from one person to another without getting the approval of the state first. Well, what do you mean, approval of the state? Well, when you go out and fill a Form 4473, and they get on the phone, they call somebody on the other end, and they ask the bureaucrat on the other end, your local gun dealer, if he has permission to sell you that gun. And the bureaucrat on the other side can say yes, no, or wait. So if you need to do that, if you need to seek permission, if you need to get a permit to purchase something, if you need to get a permit to sell something, if you need to get permission from the government to transfer your lawfully owned property, not to a felon, not to a mentally insane person, to just anyone, Is it, in fact, your property? And you're like, well, yes, of course it is. What else in your life, what other objects do you own or possess that you have to first seek out the permission of the government before selling, giving, buying, trading those things? Quick, come up with an answer. Furniture, televisions, exercise equipment, houses, cars, motorcycles, boats. Which of those things do you have to first go to the government and seek their permission and get a permission slip before you transfer it to your friend, a kid, your uncle, somebody else, or sell it or buy it? You're like, well, none, Paul. Okay. So if you have to get permission from the government to buy, sell, or transfer an object, is it in fact your property? Ask yourself that. Is it your property? And when you have rulings like this, they say, according to they upheld, essentially the Supreme Court upheld the charges against Abramski by saying that no, that the law itself was a constitutional law because it was a good intentioned law. Are you getting that part? So even though the law is maybe technically not legal, and maybe the Constitution doesn't technically give us permission to put this law in place, if the intentions of the law are good, then we're going to go with it. You guys digging that? That whole, well, as long as the intentions are there, we don't care if it actually works. The law is actually a failure in and of itself when it comes to keeping guns out of the hands of criminals and the mentally insane. Well, that is. But it seems reasonable, and the intentions are good. And that's what we have in the United States of America today. And I would ask Elena Kagan this. So if you think Abramski is guilty of violating the straw purchase law, he's guilty of negligently or falsifying the Form 4473, and God in heaven, don't screw up on a 4473. You'll go to prison because you're a felon. If that is the case, can we assume that the United States Supreme Court is going to very, very soon, they're going to subpoena Eric Holder and the head of the Justice Department, that they're going to subpoena the head of the BATF, that they're going to subpoena all of the agents from New Mexico and Arizona and Texas that were involved in the scheme to walk, in quotes, thousands of guns into the hands of Mexican drug cartel. We know that happened. It is a fact that happened. It's been well documented. One of the cases that's very, very well documented is in the book Guns Across the Border by Mike Detty, where he goes into great detail of what exactly went on during straw purchases, hundreds and hundreds of straw purchases that were approved directly by the BATFE and the Justice Department. So if Elena Kagan is really super serious about not wanting guns to get in the hands of the wrong people, can we as American citizens assume that she has subpoenas all set? She's got those subpoenas in her hand, and that she's going to be subpoenaing Holder and whoever happens to currently be in charge of the ATF and all of those guys. Are they going to be subpoenaed soon? Ladies and gentlemen in the Student of the Gun audience, I would not hold my breath waiting for that. Just saying. All right, Jared, are we ready to move on?
Yeah, let's move on to the next topic here. What do we got?
The next topic, well, it's been going on for the last week or two. We didn't get a chance to talk about it last week, but essentially, this is one of those "see, I told you so" or "damn, I hate it when I'm right" moments. And Jared's what he's gonna do is he's gonna pull an audio clip from a previous episode of Student of the Gun Radio. It's actually episode 65, part 2, and it's where I told you guys out there right now that the war on terror is over and we didn't win. Well, we started dropping bombs, and we started, scooping people up off the battlefield and interrogating them, and we were doing a really good job for a couple of years. until we lost the Congress and we lost the people. Well, back on episode 65, which is 5 weeks ago now, as we talk about this, as we do this episode, this particular one, I talked about how the war on terror is over, and I said we lost, but what I should have said is we surrendered. Now, maybe you didn't surrender, but the surrender was issued on your behalf. And what's really sad to me is I hate being right in that situation. We talked about it. We talked about how the screwed up rules of engagement and how our troops are hamstrung by these rules of engagement, and they basically make them nothing but targets. Now, you know what I was thinking, Jared, just a second ago as we were queuing up that clip, was that every night the artist formerly known as Barry Soetoro has to get down on his knees and thank Allah for the World Cup. What do you think? Yes?
Yeah.
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 He's up there in the White House thanking Allah for the World Cup so that everyone can be distracted from the complete and total abject failure of the post-war Iraq policy. What do we got going on in Iraq? Well, let me see. If you don't get the paper, the country of Iraq is currently imploding. Somewhere close to half of the country is now in the hands of Al-Qaeda-backed terrorists. That's right. The same ones in Syria that your benevolent government was sending guns to have taken those guns and turned them on the post-war Iraqi government and the soldiers and the police officers, and they're pretty much killing people wholesale right now in Iraq. This is after. Now, for those of you that have really, really short, let's talk about the first story. The first story comes to us from the New York Post, and with the kickoff of the World Cup, one of the jihadists there said, "This is our ball," as he held up the severed head of an Iraqi police chief. Well, isn't that wonderful? Isn't that wonderful? So we've got Iraq is falling apart. It's imploding. It's turned into chaos. However, fear not. Your fearless leader, our dear leader, said, according to the CNSnews.com, we've got a story here that says, fearless leader, that's not what it says. It says, Obama has touted Al-Qaeda's demise 32 times since the Benghazi attack. And again, for those of you that don't get the paper, the Benghazi attack was on 9/11/2012, so less than 2 years ago. So for less than 2 years, our dear leader has been going out and making speeches talking about how Al-Qaeda has been diminished, defeated, is on the run, and, in quotes, has been decimated. Now, apparently all the ISIS terrorists over there in Iraq and Syria and so forth, apparently they did not get the memo telling them that they had been decimated. Apparently they're not aware of that. Well, another thing that this is another damn it, I hate it when I'm right moment. Let me see, the date line of this was April 9th, 2013. And it says 20,000. That's 20000. 20,000 U.S. M16s stolen from an unguarded warehouse in Kuwait. And this was reported by the WorldTribune.com. But there were several places that picked that up over the years, or during that time. And I called BS on this from the word go, at the very moment that happened. First of all, if you know anything about the United States military, they don't leave one rifle unguarded, ever. And they certainly don't leave 20,000 of them unguarded. Well, they said, well, it wasn't the United States' responsibility to guard them. It was Kuwait's responsibility to guard them. And just, oops, the guy who was guarding them walked out back to have a smoke, came back in, and 20,000 M16s are gone. What happened to them? I don't know. I just turned my back for a minute, and they're gone. Maybe David Copperfield was here. Maybe. Who's that new hipster magician in Las Vegas, Jared? Chris something.
Chris Angel.
Yeah, maybe Chris Angel was there. Maybe
he's not really a new hipster.
Well, whatever. Maybe poof, he made them disappear. No, but according to the story, 20,000 M16A2 rifles and 15,000 rounds of 9mm ammunition were stolen, went missing when there were no guards during the break-in, it says. Really? Seriously? No guards? Now, let me break this down for you, ladies and gentlemen. And you've got an M16 rifle, an M16A2. Now, empty weight is like 8.75 pounds, I believe. So let's just round it up to 9 for even numbers. So 9 pounds times 20,000. 180,000 pounds of guns, of hardware. Divide it by tonnage. Now, for those of you that went to public school, there are 2,000 pounds in a ton. So we divide 180, and what do we come up with? 9,000 tons? Is it 9,000 tons, Jared, or 900 tons? Jared's, he's staring. I'm trying to do math on the radio, kid. All right, but anyway, it comes down to if you had to move these guns using military deuce and a half, that's 2.5 ton capable trucks, you would need over 30 trucks. You would need a convoy, like a brigade size or a battalion size convoy of trucks to move all of these M16 rifles out of the warehouse where they were stored. And we're just supposed to, I guess it was just like a couple of gangbangers or street hoodlums that walked in and took these. Now, that story goes all the way back to April of 2013, and we stopped thinking about it. Well, here just recently, when Iraq started imploding, the BBC, or it was the Daily Mail.uk, does a story about the ISIS spokesman. And this guy who actually has made his face known, which is rare for these kind of guys, goes out in public, and he's flanked by masked guards. And the guards, what do you suppose his armed guards are holding? Would it be brand new M16A2 rifles? Why, yes, give yourself a cookie. So here we have, we found them. The mystery is solved. The 20,000 missing M16A2 rifles that just kind of disappeared from a warehouse in Kuwait, miraculously, they're showing up on the battlefields in Syria and Iraq. Is that not the craziest thing you've ever heard? What? That's so crazy. Now, I'm not going to go so far as to say that agents of the current administration arranged for those guns to be given to their allies in the ISIS terrorist organization in Syria. I'm not going to go that far because that would be crazy, right, Jared? That would be conspiracy stuff right there.
Yeah, that would be.
Now, when you see Haji terrorists standing around holding M16A2 rifles, you might be scratching your head and thinking, how did those guys get those? Did they go fill out a Form 4473? You know what, Jared? I know how it happened. I just figured it out.
How did it happen?
They violated the 4473 by committing a straw purchase.
There you go.
You know, I think that Elena Kagan should look into that. I think that maybe she might want to subpoena the spokesperson for the ISIS terrorist organization and ask him if indeed he did commit a straw purchase or if he went through the proper procedures and he filled out the 4473 and did the appropriate background check. Because if we have universal background checks, ISIS terrorists won't get United States military hardware. Now, folks, I'm not going to depress you by telling you all of the military hardware that these terrorists that we just ignored have captured, U.S. military hardware that they've captured here when we basically just punted and left. I'm not going to tell you, I'm not going to bore you with stories about how the sitting Iraqi government requested military aid and support from the current administration, and that not yesterday, not 2 weeks ago, months ago, they saw this coming and they knew they needed help and they asked for the help and it was denied because that would make Comrade Barry look bad, and because he's already said that the war's over and that we won it, and Al Qaeda's on the run, and they're diminished, or they're decimated. I'm sorry, not diminished, decimated. So offering military support to the Iraqi government against these jihadist terrorists, that would make them look bad. So we're not going to do that. Just kind of like in the whole Benghazi thing, where we didn't want to send additional military support to Benghazi because that would show that it would make us look bad. It would make us look like there were actually jihadist terrorists in Libya. Remember the Libyan regime that we helped topple with jihadist terrorists? Well, I hate to depress you like that, but folks, you need to wake up. You need to get the paper. You need to pay attention to what's going on. Jared, how far into this are we?
We're 40 minutes in now.
All right, ladies and gentlemen and children of all ages, if you're listening closely and if you have good speakers or if you have a really good headphones on, you might hear a little bit of weather noise. Right now, the Student of the Gun studio is right smack in the middle of a ferocious southern Mississippi thunderstorm. And I know what you guys were thinking. You're probably thinking out there, you're like, well, that's probably just thunder that Jared's putting in there to make Paul's story sound more ominous. And that would be a good idea, but it is not. What we're going to do right now is we're going to go ahead and put the wraps on this particular episode of Student of the Gun Radio. We certainly appreciate you taking the time out of your busy week, your busy schedule to join us again. Now, folks, before I let you go, I want to remind you that we do have a Student of the Gun mobile app for your iPhone and your Android phone and your tablets and all that good stuff. Download it free for nothing. Thanks to our good friends at Century Arms. They are the official sponsor of the mobile app. And through the mobile app, you can follow us on social media. You can listen to the radio show. You can get updates on the latest articles, videos, all that good stuff. Basically everything Student of the Gun. If you want to watch a TV show, check it out. Dish Network Channel 266 every Monday night at 9 Eastern on Dish Network, that is. And you can watch it on Chantel Media. You can also now, thanks to Wilderness TV, you can go to the Roku app for Wilderness TV or the Apple TV app or the Chromecast app, and you can watch us on your smart TV. How cool is that? And if you don't have any of that jazz whatsoever, we still love you. You can still go to studentofthegun.com and watch the shows right there. Now, Jared and I are busy little beavers. We've been working hard behind the scenes. We're setting up dates for Student of the Gun University. We've got a lot of training coming up. We have Pistol 101, ballistic problem solving, and that is learning to think with a gun in your hand, which is never a bad idea. We have the Beyond the Band-Aid course, Fighting First Aid, and we also have a Force Options course because not every day is a gun day. Sometimes you have to do other things to save your life. We would love for you to check that out and come down here to Free America and join us at Student of the Gun University. We've got a lot of good stuff coming up for you guys. We're filming new stuff for the TV show. Been very, very busy with that, and we appreciate each and every one of you out there in the Student of the Gun audience. You guys are wonderful. You give us, aren't they wonderful, Jared?
They are wonderful, and we appreciate you.
He wants me to stop asking him questions. He's doing engineer stuff over there. But ladies and gentlemen, thank you once again for joining us for Student of the Gun. And remember, you are a beginner once, but you should indeed be a student for life.